Brianna Maitland was a teenager who disappeared in March 2004 after finishing her shift at a local inn in Montgomery, Vermont. At the time, she was only 17 years old. In Montgomery, Vermont on March 20th, 2004, the Vermont State Police received a call about an abandoned car near the Old Dutchburn barn. It was a green 1985 Oldsmobile Delta positioned at a peculiar angle. Its rear bumper had snagged onto the building's foundation, which lifted the rear tires upwards, making it impossible for the vehicle to drive off. When law enforcement arrived, they discovered equally strange details. There were no signs that the vehicle had veered wildly off-road before it collided with the building. Additionally, the vehicle was unlocked with no signs of the keys. There were also no signs of people in the immediate area, whether in the barn or just in the wilderness. When investigators took a look inside the vehicle, they were equally confused. There were 2 unopened paychecks from Brianna's place of employment, Black Lantern Inn, and obviously both of them were written out to Brianna Maitland. Police immediately determined that the vehicle belonged to Brianna and set out to locate her. The first stop was Black Lantern Inn, but when investigators arrived at the business, it was closed, so they had to return at a later point. Meanwhile, Brianna's Oldsmobile was being relocated to a tow yard. Brianna and her mother, Kelly, went on a shopping trip the day prior to her disappearance in St. Albans. The outing didn't last long as Brianna had to return home and get ready for her shift at the inn. Before she left that day, the people who last saw her reported that she seemed normal, if not even happier than usual. This may have been a result of her anticipation to get to work. Brianna's co-workers shared that nothing out of the ordinary occurred when Brianna was working. At about 11:20 p.m., one of the other employees took note of Brianna getting inside her car and driving out of the parking lot. This was the final time Brianna was seen officially. What exactly happened to her afterward remains a mystery. Fast forward to March 23rd, 2004, Kelly Maitland reached out to the Vermont State Police to report her daughter Brianna missing. Then, 2 days later, Kelly, accompanied by her husband Bruce, made their way to the State Police Barracks in St. Albans to submit some photos of their daughter to assist in the search/spread of information. This was when one of the officers noticed a photo matching the Oldsmobile they found. This officer decided to share some photos of the abandoned vehicle belonging to Brianna at the barn with the parents, both of whom confirmed that the car belonged to their daughter. Notably, the Black Lantern Inn where Brianna worked was located less than 2 miles away from where the vehicle was discovered. Initially, most investigators were of the opinion that Brianna had run away somewhere, but for what reason, they were unsure. She may have wanted to start a new life, or she may have been trying to get away from someone or something. The former seemed very unlikely, so police set their sights on the possibility that foul play was involved. 1 week after Brianna's disappearance, law enforcement returned to the site of the abandoned vehicle to allow their K9 units to search the location, and they discovered an out-of-place item nearby. After some DNA testing, officials could not determine who the DNA on the item belonged to, but they did compare it to about a dozen suspects. Additionally, it should be noted that police were not sure how long this item was left in the area. It could have been after or even before Brianna's vehicle was discovered. Come fall 2020, the Vermont State Police Major Crime Unit joined forces with Othram with the goal to extract leads from the same DNA evidence obtained from the item. Othram scientists utilized forensic-grade genome sequencing to craft a DNA profile. Months of relentless follow-up investigation allowed the police to pinpoint, interview, and collect DNA samples from potential donors. These samples underwent comparison testing at the Vermont Forensic Laboratory, and surprisingly, officials obtained a match and made the information public in the first half of 2022. But it seems like investigators haven't released the identity of the match yet, but they did say that the match was one of the dozen or so suspects that they had been looking into prior. Detective Sergeant Angela Baker said, "It's important to note that this doesn't mean we have identified a suspect. We are continuing our active efforts to investigate every lead associated with this case, and we constantly look for new technological advances to aid in our investigation." The use of genetic genealogy to identify the DNA found 18 years ago is just one example of how detectives continue to track down every potential lead in this case. So this case seems to be making some significant progress, and who knows, maybe this mystery will finally come to an end this year and Brianna's family can finally get some closure. Dick Hansen was a former college football star living in San Jose, California, who died from a gunshot wound on April 29, 1991, when he and his friends visited a bar. Around 1 a.m., Dick and his friend Jean departed in her car, reaching the restaurant where Dick had left his pickup truck by 1:30 a.m. While in Jean's car, another vehicle pulled up behind them. Dick and Jean were blocking a mailbox, so they assumed that the person behind them was trying to get to it. They were considering whether to move to provide space. Despite Jean's desire to move, Dick felt there was sufficient room and remained in his car during their conversation. When they were ready to leave, Jean agreed to follow Dick as she was unfamiliar with the area. As they set out in their separate vehicles, the unknown man also started his engine and seemed to be following them. The driver would make the same turns at lights and swap lanes when either Jean or Dick did so as well. Dick took note of this first and signaled for Jean to follow him onto the freeway, hoping that would throw off the vehicle. Unfazed, the man continued tailing them for over 10 miles, persisting even as they merged onto the freeway. There, the driver continued to mirror Jean's moves. Jean attempted to get the man off their trail by swapping lanes sporadically and even brake checking him, but nothing worked. At this point, John was freaking out, so she pulled up to Dick and urged him to get the police. However, he couldn't hear her and instructed her to follow him to the next exit. Despite nearly missing the exit, Jean reported that the man continued following them off the freeway. Upon pulling over, Jean pointed out the man in his car, almost as if to tell Dick to do something. So Dick walked up to the vehicle, tailing them, and asked what was going on. Dick then stepped back and raised his voice, at which point the man shot him twice. In a panicked state, Jean rushed back in an attempt to assist, but found herself frozen in fear, staring at the man. The man glanced back at Jean before pulling off into the night. By the time paramedics arrived, Dick was dead. From the beginning, investigators have struggled with identifying a suspect and motive in this case. Some, including Jean, speculate that the killer's build, which was similar to a football player, and the license plate number 49R Hugs, which was a nod to the San Francisco 49ers, might have played a role in Dick's death, potentially at the hands of a fanatical fan from a rival team. Despite efforts, the killer remains unidentified and the case remains unsolved. Police released a composite sketch of the killer and described him as a white male with a dark complexion. At the time of the crime, the killer could have been in his late 30s to mid 40s. He had on glasses with thick black frames, and while there wasn't a concise description of the vehicle, it is believed to be a 1970 Pontiac GTO Le Mans. The vehicle also had a faded light gray/blue paint job. In 2014 in Ohio, mother Nicole Allen purchased a gift for her 2-year-old daughter 1 week after Halloween at a dollar store. The toy was a princess wand with flower petals, and the cardboard packaging showed off a sort of a female hero. The toy was recommended for ages 3 and up. To 99% of people, the toy seemed like nothing more than just some cheap plastic, the type of item you would glance at for 2 seconds and either buy it or forget about it. What Nicole Allen didn't realize was that the toy's lighthearted appearance masked a somewhat malevolent name. At the top, in a childlike font, read the official product name, Evilstick. Nicole only understood why it was given the name when she got home. Opposite of the promise of playing beautiful music, pushing a button on the wand's handle triggered a maniacal laugh, which was made even creepier due to the cheap and tiny speaker within the toy. Simultaneously, pressing the button caused the flower top to illuminate, revealing a piece of foil showing a horrifying image of a woman with pupilless eyes mimicking the act of harming herself. Just why was there such a horrifying image in a child's toy? Not to mention the creepy audio that the toy played. Nicole made a complaint that quickly caught the attention of local news, leading to the story spreading across the nation. But no matter who learned of the toy, nobody knew who the manufacturer was. Was this some sort of bootleg, or was it holding some sinister secret? Many people believe the toy was some obscure Chinese import. For example, one Reddit user made the following comment under a post asking about the toy. Ah, the infamous Evilstick. I know these odd toys first came to public attention around the early 2010s with that clickbait article you mentioned, but I have proof that their history in the US goes back at least 6 years earlier than that. I'm sure this comment is going to get buried, but my best friend Trevor and I stumbled upon these things while shopping at a dollar store in Nyack, New York in September of 2008. I uploaded 2 pictures of him holding the toy in the dollar store to my Flickr photo stream. In the first 2 photos, photos, if you look in the background, you can see the rest of the evilstick toys hanging up on the wall behind him. We thought they were just quirky, funny toys at the time. We didn't realize the horrifying truth of what was laying beneath the foil flower-shaped cutout. Perhaps it is worth noting that the dollar store where we found the evilstick was owned by a Chinese family, and most of the toys and products sold in the store were Chinese imports. After further investigation, several internet sleuths discovered that these sticks had different variations. A YouTube video showing off the toy would go viral, eventually leading to the identification of the person who took the photo of the image. The photographer was named Butcher Ludwig. According to Butcher, the photo was taken in 2002 and it was part of a series called Macabre Muses. The series of photos was focused around a vampire theme where they feasted on blood. Furthermore, the model in that particular photo was 20 years old when it was taken, and it gets interesting when Butcher says that he never gave anyone permission to use the photo in the toy. He was surprised and a bit angry that someone had taken his photo and altered it with the demonic eyes. So it's likely that someone had come across his photo on the internet and just swiped it for themselves. But that begs the question, just who did it? Internet sleuths were able to track down the origin of the toy to a factory in China via the barcode. After contacting the manufacturer through Alibaba, they confirmed they created the toy. But as far as I know, the investigation sort of meets a dead end here and no further information was obtained about the toy. That's because the manufacturer, for whatever reason, stopped responding to emails inquiring about the toy. And it seems that the name of this factory has also faded into obscurity. This entry refers to a video apparently recorded back in the mid-1980s. It depicts a martial arts instructor named Bobby Joe Blythe sparring with someone who is apparently mentally ill. Now, I cannot show you the entire video, but it is available on Reddit. This session quickly turns into a one-sided beating where Bobby beats the man to the point where he is gasping for air.
Drag him out the back door. Drag him out the back door. Drag him out the back door.
Bobby takes it way too far and even starts striking at the back of the other man's head/nape area. I'm not sure if it's Bobby himself saying it or someone else, but you can hear "drag him out the back door." And apparently, the man was tossed into the dumpster. Some people believe that this man ultimately died, but there isn't exactly proof of this, but Bobby himself claimed that the man survived. So the mystery lies within whether or not the man died and his identity, because it doesn't seem like anyone knows who he is, besides maybe Bobby himself. There is a Reddit post that attempts to debunk the mystery, stating that it isn't unresolved. It was created by user Shinny Meggy and said the following: "To me, this isn't a unresolved mystery. It's only unresolved in far as why the police haven't taken steps to apprehend the man involved in the video. And obviously who Kung Fu Guy is also unresolved as far as being named is concerned. But maybe I've grown more soft over the years and this video is actually a well-crafted hoax." In a video claiming to be recorded in December 1984, a young black man approached two other men in a dojo. The man, unidentified to this day, was nicknamed Kung Fu Guy. He claimed Jesus taught him karate and wanted simply to demonstrate this to the leader of the dojo, Bobby Joe Blythe. I can't exaggerate how much we know this is BJB. We know it's his dojo, we know where and when he trained people in 1984, and we know from other videos that he's a violent homophobe even for the early 80s. He has threatened to stomp any pupils who were Fs. Regardless, his behavior up until this video has only been questionable for a teacher, not technically illegal. So in December, a man claiming to be taught by Jesus, a possible symptom of mental illness, though it is notable that he's quite well presented and shows no signs of delusions whilst he's actually in the building, offers to demonstrate around a pupil at the dojo. He makes it very clear he doesn't intend to touch or hurt the man. However, after getting BJB's blessing, he is kicked straight out of the block. After a while of quote-unquote sparring with some blows landing home on both sides, BJB decides he's had enough. He pushes Kung Fu Guy roughly into a pole so hard that he collapses and then stamps on his head, repeatedly until there's blood. I'm someone who can watch gore without flinching. It doesn't bother me. It's why I trained to be a social worker. It's why I'm training to be a mortician. But in even the censored video, it's the breathing that gets to me. It's a breathing that some people believe is a death rattle. Once he's on the floor and BJB has been talked down from his mindless attack by some of his students, he tells them to drag the guy out back. They do so, leaving a thin trail of blood in their wake. BJB then records the blood and the back door, which for people who think it's a hoax is suspiciously bright for early evening in December in Virginia, but he could have been back and recorded it later. Cup of Idiocy is a piece of lost media created by Doug Walker, aka Nostalgia Critic. It was essentially a compilation of sorts. The film contained a random assortment of shorts and skits. It was first shown in one of Nostalgia Critic's reviews, then it was shown again when he reviewed it himself. There is heavy speculation that a massive portion of the film had been cut and never shown, driving many fans to wonder if the full movie will ever surface. In 1991, Christopher Case, a 35-year-old from Raleigh, North Carolina, moved to Seattle after a stint as a radio broadcaster. Christopher was described as eccentric and adventurous. He went on a trip to San Francisco in April 1991 for a work conference. During the conference, Christopher met a woman who shared his interest in ancient music. This unidentified woman took a romantic interest in Christopher, but he declined her advancements. The rejection didn't sit well with her, leading to a rather strange subsequent event. The woman claimed to be a witch and cursed Christopher. With this curse, Chris was to die within a week. Most people would probably shrug this off as a random freak encounter, but Chris was genuinely disturbed by this. So he hit up his friends and told them about his recent encounter. One of the friends he contacted was Sammy Soder, a psychic. To her, Christopher appeared stable and had shown no previous inclination towards beliefs in witchcraft or the occult. On April 18, 1991, concern for Christopher Case grew when a friend in North Carolina couldn't reach him. This prompted the friend to contact police, who then got in touch with Seattle authorities and did a wellness check on Chris. She shared Christopher's growing paranoia and fear, fueled by the alleged curse he faced. When the police entered his apartment, they were met with a creepy scene. Salt lines ran along the base of each wall, crucifixes adorned the walls, and a dozen burned down candles were arranged in such a way that one would think a ritual was held here. As investigators made their way into the bathroom, they discovered Christopher Case dead in his bathtub. The cause of death was eventually determined to be a heart attack, leading to speculation that Christopher Case literally scared himself to death. Investigators, especially amateurs from the internet, like to throw out wild, fantastical theories. But when you look at the situation objectively, there really aren't many possibilities to explain Chris's death. We also need to consider if the curse was truly genuine. For the sake of the theory, let's just say it was, and this mystery woman was proficient in witchcraft. Christopher engaged in various protective measures, including the salt, the candles, and the crucifixes, as a means to thwart its effects. It raises the interesting possibility that the curse, if real, became a self-fulfilling prophecy. The stress of anticipating impending doom might have triggered the heart attack. There is another possibility that isn't really spoken about much, but seemed somewhat reasonable. Carbon monoxide poisoning from the excessive amount of candles grouped up in such a small living space. However, it seems that there wasn't much evidence to support this from the autopsy. So in the end, there are many enthusiasts of the supernatural who believe that Chris was truly cursed to die, while skeptics are not so quick to jump on this theory. In Alexandria, Virginia, there is a local legend about a young couple who sailed to the city in 1816. They decided to spend time at Gadsby's Tavern and got a room there. Around this time, the woman fell ill, prompting the husband to seek out a doctor. He would find one. However, the husband had a strange request. He shared that he had a strict condition where the doctor could not ask about the couple's identity. The woman's health rapidly declined, leading to her eventual death on October 14, 1816. To bury her in town, her husband borrowed money from a local businessman, repaying the debt with a note from the Bank of England, which later turned out to be a fake. The presence of the couple eventually led to rumors and speculation among locals. The woman's grave is still located in the St. Paul's Episcopal Church section of the town's cemetery. The slab is also inscribed, "To the memory of a female stranger whose mortal sufferings terminated on the 14th day of October 1816, aged 23 years and 8 months. This stone was placed here by her disconsolate husband, in whose arms she sighed out her latest breath, and who under God did his utmost even to soothe the cold dead ear of death. Several theories arose in regards to the woman's identity, but it seems like the most commonly agreed upon one suggests that she was Theodosia Burr Alston, who was the daughter of former Vice President Aaron Burr, who was lost at sea in 1813. Today, the grave remains a tourist attraction for visitors. Near Melbourne, Australia, on October 21st, 1978, a lone-engine Cessna embarked on its journey from Moorabbin Airport. 20-year-old Frederich Valentich was the pilot. He had 2 years of experience and over 150 solo hours. His destination was King Island, which followed a 40-minute course along the Australian coast heading west. Upon reaching Cape Otway, he planned to change of direction, heading south for a half-hour flight over Bass Strait. Ken Llewellyn, who was part of the Royal Australian Air Force, had the following to say about the flight. It was a fairly normal exercise. He had an appropriate instrument rating for the trip. It was a very straightforward flight, and I could see no reason why it shouldn't have concluded successfully. What happened 3/4 of an hour into that flight, I think, will be one of the great mysteries of Australian aviation. Frederich contacted a flight service center when he noticed a large aircraft zoom by him several times. This aircraft was at least 1,000 feet above him. According to ground control, Frederich was not panicking at this time, but he was a bit concerned. He also showed signs of confusion, which led to concern among ground personnel as well. According to Frederich, the aircraft was stationary and sort of hovered in midair. This is what the radio communication between Frederich and the personnel on the ground said. "Fred, it's got a green light that's sort of metallic, like it's shiny all over. It just disappeared. Is this some sort of military aircraft or what? Tower, Delta Sierra Juliet, is the aircraft still with you? Fred, Delta Sierra Juliet, now approaching from southwest. Delta Sierra Juliet, the engine's gone into half idle. I've got it set on 2324. This thing's just coughing. The strange aircraft's just hovering on top of me again. It's hovering, and it's not an aircraft." After that, a sound that's described as clicking could be heard on the radio, and it lasted for approximately 17 seconds. A search party was sent out to investigate the area, and after 4 days, they returned with no results. Frederich was now missing, and there were no signs of another aircraft. There were also no signs that a collision had occurred. Then one day, an alleged witness came forward and said, "I looked up and saw this long green light about 1,000 or 2,000 feet above the aircraft. So we sat there and watched it for a few seconds, and the green light crept closer to the plane. That plane is coming down pretty steep. It's at a 45-degree angle. I think it's going to crash." At this point, rumors of an alien UFO were spreading. This witness requested to remain anonymous, but they said that they never actually saw a crash. Then, about 2 months after, an amateur photographer came forward with additional information. His name was Roy Manifold, and he claimed to have taken a photo of the UFO Frederich had reported. After he developed the photo, he said, "I observed this mark on the print that looked like a developing error or something. They messed it up. Just a minute, that night I took that is exactly the night that this guy disappeared." After further inspection, the photo was determined to not have any dirt or damage that could explain the mark. UFO researchers claimed that the mark was actually metallic. To this day, Frederick's fate remains unknown, and just what he saw is also shrouded in mystery. So this entry refers to a particular woman who was a victim of Samuel Little, but if you search up Harris County Jane Doe, there are unfortunately dozens of victims. According to Samuel, he took this woman's life around the mid to late 1970s or possibly in 1993. He wasn't sure. He confessed to the murder in 2018 and stated that he was passing through Houston, Texas. That's when he noticed the worker on the side of the road and picked her up. The two drove off to a secluded area to where Samuel said he immediately murdered her. He did not have sex with the woman, but instead strangled her and dumped the body on the road. The woman is African American and aged between 25 to 30 years old. She has remained unidentified for about 5 decades now. Samuel Little admitted to killing over 90 women from 1970 to 2005, all of whom either had ties with illegal substances or work. While many bodies have not been located, authorities do believe that his confessions are credible. Leigh Occhi was 13 years old when she disappeared from Tupelo, Mississippi during Hurricane Andrew. Leigh's parents, Vicky Felton and Donald Occhi, both worked within the U.S. Army and eventually separated. It was August 27, 1992, when Leigh was home alone after her mother left for work at around 8 a.m. At the time, Leigh's father was in Virginia. Just as Vicky checked into work at her office, she was notified of an impending storm headed towards her residence. Vicky was concerned, so she called home to tell her daughter about the storm, but no one picked up. Vicky requested to return home, which was granted, and after making the 1.5-mile trip back, she found her garage door left wide open. She cautiously entered the home and noticed blood streaking on the side of the wall. Vicky called out for her daughter, but got no response. She started scouring the home for Leigh, but couldn't locate her anywhere. That's when she called 911. Investigators located blood in Leigh's bedroom, the hallway, and bathroom, and obviously, they suspected foul play. They believed that the blood in the bathroom was a sign that the culprit had attempted to clean off the blood. Vicky also informed police that several items belonging to her daughter were missing. The house itself showed no signs of forced entry. Immediately, search parties were sent out to search Tupelo, primarily the more wooded areas, but there was little to show for the search effort. When Leigh's father, Donald, was interviewed regarding the incident, he said that he believed his daughter was dead the day Vicky called him, informing him that Leigh was missing. Donald added that during his own search in Tupelo, locals would tell him to look into his ex-wife, which Donald was already secretly doing, but in the end, he did not believe she was responsible. There was also a theory that Vicky's ex-boyfriend, who she had recently split from, named Barney Yarborough, may have had a hand in Leigh's disappearance. It was rumored that Barney was abusive towards her, but police ruled him out as a possible suspect after he provided a solid alibi. Fast forward to September 4th, 1992, about a week since the girl's disappearance, an employee at a McDonald's in Boonville contacted police and told them that a girl had come in that looked like Leigh. This sparked a bit of hope in the public, but the girl was quickly ruled out to be someone else entirely. Another 5 days later, an intriguing package was mailed to Vicky's address. It was a box that contained a pair of glasses belonging to Leigh with the sender's address coming from Boonville. There was another development with a skull being found in a soybean field believed to be Leigh. A Monroe County coroner even confirmed that it was Leigh. However, they retracted that statement shortly after making it. Instead, it was confirmed that the skull belonged to a 27-year-old missing woman named Pollyanna Sue Keith. Earlier, I mentioned that some suspected that Vicky herself was involved in Leigh's disappearance. Well, law enforcement did 3 separate examinations into her, and after they were done, one investigator said, "You still can't eliminate her. There are still too many unanswered questions for Vicky, and I don't know if it is unusual for somebody to go off to work and say, well, I just left Leigh, but I'm going to call and check on her. Why check on her that soon after she just left her?" Of course, Vicky denies being involved and stated that she believed a man named Oscar McKinley Kearns was responsible. Oscar was convicted of kidnapping a couple and a woman. Then, after Leigh's disappearance, he was caught kidnapping and a 9th grade girl in Memphis, Tennessee. In Sioux Falls, South Dakota, a 55-year-old woman named Marlis Janice Thomas, who was in declining health, came to a haunting revelation. More than 3 decades ago, she thought she had laid her infant daughter to rest in a Minnesota graveyard. Now, she believes that her long-lost daughter might still be alive. In 1962, at the age of 20, while being 7 months pregnant, Marlis moved to Bigelow, Minnesota after separating from her husband, Leighton Gross. Marlis was to give birth on June 12th at Worthington Hospital, but due to being heavily sedated, she had a tough time recalling the day in detail. Marlis's recollection is hazy. She remembers waking up and glimpsing at her daughter, Mary Agnes Gross, for the first time. Drifting back to sleep, she later awoke and realized that her newborn was missing. She asked the nurse where Mary was, and she was told that the doctor would be in shortly to explain the situation. When the doctor finally arrived, Marlis requested to see Mary. To her shock, she was told that the infant had passed away, living only about an hour. Confused and angry, Marlis couldn't really grasp the news. Upon leaving the delivery room, Marlis crossed paths with a bassinet making its way to the morgue. Marlis believed this to be her daughter and asked to see the baby. The nurse lifted the sheet for a fleeting 15 seconds. It was indeed Mary under the sheet, but Marlis couldn't shake the feeling that the baby was still alive. She seemed peacefully asleep. Marlis distinctly recalled Mary having abundant long dark brown hair and noticed marks on her forehead. Interestingly, medical staff never disclosed the circumstances of the girl's death. Additionally, when Marlis requested an autopsy report, she was told that it was too late. During her hospital stay, Marlis's friend Judy Vogus, accompanied by Marlis's mother Clara, visited the funeral home. Judy asserted that the baby she saw differed from Marlis's description. There were no marks on the forehead, the hair was light brown or blonde, not dark brown, and there was only a sparse amount of it on the baby's head. Adding to the mystery, when Clara attempted to photograph the baby, the funeral director refused, insisting she could do so at the cemetery after the casket was closed. Later in the day, Clara managed to capture images of the casket just before the burial. However, a certain detail made the situation even stranger. Clara encountered another family at the gravesite, grieving the loss of a child. Neither Marlis nor Clara could identify the other family or discern their connection to the burial site. A week after the funeral, Marlis visited Mary Agnes's gravesite. At that time, only one grave occupied the space. Marlis made regular visits, accepting Mary Agnes passing as reality. However, 3 months later, an unsettling twist occurred. Marlis received a photograph in the mail. The envelope was blue and missing a return address. There was no letter, just a photo. The photo featured a husband, a wife, and 3 children, including a baby girl with features like Leighton. Strangely, Marlis failed to recognize anyone in the picture, and her family shared the same sentiment. Despite the unfamiliar faces, they all noted the uncanny resemblance of the baby to Leighton. It would take nearly 3 decades for Marlis to come to the realization that this child was possibly Mary herself. It took Marlis over a year to save up enough money to afford a headstone. However, in an odd turn of events, when she did purchase it, it was not placed on top of Mary's burial plot. Instead, it was shifted a few feet to the side. Marlis moved on with her life by remarrying and having 3 children, but nevertheless, she would always revisit Mary's grave. During a visit in 1993, she was confronted with some jarring news. In 1989, 4 years prior, a headstone for a different baby named Pamela Ray Dickey had been mistakenly placed on Mary Agnes's burial plot. Puzzled and disturbed, Marlis questioned the funeral director, who admitted to always having wondered why Mary Agnes's headstone was there, considering that there was no corresponding grave. He informed her that Mary Agnes was not buried at that location. And after digging through cemetery records, there was no evidence of Mary Agnes's burial. However, there was a record of Pamela being interred in the cemetery. Deeply troubled, Marlis's old doubts resurfaced, prompting her to look into the details of Mary's supposed death and burial. To her astonishment, she discovered an eerie coincidence. Pamela had died just hours before Mary on the same day in the same hospital. More startlingly, Mary Agnes and Pamela were both buried on the same day. However, there was only one funeral and one grave. Marlis asserted that after the funeral, only one heap of dirt remained at the site. But there was yet another twist to be had. Marlis stumbled upon Mary Agnes's last name, Agnos, inscribed in the upper corner of one of Pamela's funeral documents. Hospital records indicated Mary Agnes was born healthy with a normal heart rate and color. However, the death certificate contradicted this, stating she never drew a breath. The birth certificate noted her birth at 6:23 p.m., while the death certificate claimed she died 3 minutes before being born at 6:20 p.m. Faced with these inconsistencies, Marlis began entertaining suspicions that Mary Agnes might not have died. In her quest for answers, Marlis turned to Pamela's mother, Margaret Dickey. Understandably, Margaret hesitated to mess with her daughter's grave. In November 1996, with legal support, she organized the exhumation of the grave beneath Mary Agnes's tombstone. Although the remains were aged and challenging to identify, Marlis's intuition proved correct. DNA testing revealed that the child laid to rest there was neither Mary Agnes nor Pamela. Instead, it was that of an unidentified full-term baby girl. Marlis began contemplating the possibility that the casket her mother Clara had captured in photographs might have been wrong. Upon showing the images of the casket to Margaret, who had been hospitalized during Pamela's burial and never witnessed the casket, Margaret confirmed it as Pamela's, purchased by her husband. Marlis proceeded to question the attendees at Pamela's funeral. Margaret mentioned her in-laws and husband attending, yet none of them recalled encountering any strangers at the gravesite. Despite this, Marlis now entertains the possibility that Clara attended Pamela's funeral and Pamela was properly interred beneath her tombstone. She also suggests that the baby discovered in the grave beneath Mary Agnes's tombstone was buried years before 1962. If Marlis's hypothesis holds true and Pamela is buried where she believed her own daughter was laid to rest, the mystery surrounding Mary Agnes deepens. Currently, Marlis thinks there is only one conceivable explanation. She argues that the baby in the photograph she received over 30 years ago was her firstborn daughter. Marlis theorizes that the family depicted in the picture adopted Mary Agnes, and someone intended to convey that her daughter was part of a loving family. Marlis shared that she believed that because she was young, 23 years old, when she had Mary, the hospital staff did not think that she was capable of caring for the child, leading them to place the baby in another family's care. Marlis is tormented with the thoughts of just what happened to Mary, clinging to the hope that she will one day relocate her and reconnect. In January 1959, a 23-year-old hiker named Igor Ohatlov embarked on a journey to reach the peak of a mountain in the northern Urals of Soviet Russia called Otorten. With him was a team of 8 experienced hikers from the Ural Polytechnical Institute. Before their departure, Ohatlov assured his sports club that he and his team would send a telegram upon their return. However, that telegram was never sent, and the hikers of the Ohatlov Pass incident were never seen alive again. In the following weeks, when their bodies were discovered, investigators were confronted with strange and gruesome injuries that left them both confused and disgusted. Some hikers were missing parts, including eyes, and one even lost their tongue. Furthermore, some of the injuries were described as though the person had collided with a speeding vehicle. The Soviet government was quick to close the Ohatlov Pass case. They provided vague explanations and asserted that the hikers simply died of hypothermia as a result of their inexperience. Additionally, an avalanche may have played a role too. Obviously, nobody really accepted this answer to the incident, and decades later, there are still investigators, whether professional or amateur, still trying to solve this case. In 2019, the Russian government decided to reopen the case, only to close it once again shortly afterward. 2 years later, Swiss scientists entered the scene, claiming to have unraveled the Ohatlov Pass mystery with their own theory, but it also isn't regarded as a concise answer. After taking a look at the recovered cameras and diaries found at the site, investigators were able to somewhat reconstruct the events when the team began their journey. Conditions were harsh, but the group pressed forward toward the mountain's base only to be met by snowstorms tearing through the narrow pass. Declining visibility led to the team losing their sense of direction. Instead of progressing toward Otorten, an inadvertent detour occurred, taking them westward onto the slope of a neighboring mountain. This particular mountain goes by the name Kolatsiakl, aka Dead Mountain, in the language of the indigenous Mansi people inhabiting the region. In an effort to maintain the altitude they had achieved, Ohatlov opted to start up camp on this mountainside, but little did he know that this camp was also going to serve as the setting for the group's demise. By February 20th, with no updates from the hikers, a search party was issued. The volunteer rescue team, venturing through the Ohatlov Pass, located the campsite, but found no trace of the hikers. Subsequently, military and police investigators were dispatched, hoping they would have better luck in locating the missing hikers. Upon reaching the mountain, investigators were far from optimistic. While the hikers were seasoned, the chosen route posed considerable challenges, and accidents on such demanding trails were a significant concern. Given the extended duration of the hikers' disappearance, investigators assumed that the group had met their end in a tragic accident. Their expectations would turn out to be half true. The bodies were found, but the state in which they were found only raised more questions. At the campsite, investigators immediately observed that the tent had been cut open from the inside. Moreover, the tent was more or less completely destroyed. Oddly, items belonging to the group, including shoes, were left behind at the camp. Following that, investigators came across 8 or 9 sets of footprints left by the team, and these footprints were strange because some of them were from people barefoot or with only a single shoe. These footprints led to the outskirts of the nearby woods, nearly a mile away from the camp. At the edge of the forest, investigators dug up the scraps of a small fire alongside the first two bodies, Yuri Krivonashenko, 23, and Yuri Doroshenko, 21. Despite facing temperatures ranging from -13 to -22 degrees Fahrenheit on the night of their deaths, both men were found without shoes, clad only in underwear. Not long after the bodies of Dyatlov, Zenaida Kolmogorova, 22, and Rustam Slobodin, 23, were also found. While the circumstances in which the bodies were found raised eyebrows, investigators asserted that the causes of death were pretty mundane. They all died of hypothermia. Their bodies exhibited no signs of significant external trauma beyond that inflicted by the harsh conditions. However, this straightforward explanation failed to account for a number of oddities. Doroshenko was described as having a brown-purple complexion with gray foam emanating from his right cheek and gray liquid from his mouth. Furthermore, the discovery of scraped hands on the first two hikers, along with torn branches above them, hinted at desperate attempts to seek shelter from an unknown threat in a tree. Then Slobodin exhibited head injuries consistent with repeated falls, and Kolmogorova bore a baton-shaped bruise on her side. These two, along with the others discovered by this point, were suspiciously underdressed. This led many to believe that they had to abruptly and hastily flee into the night. The remaining hikers were found buried beneath the snow in a ravine located 75 meters deeper into the woods from where the first bodies were found. Nikolai Brignoles, 23, experienced significant skull damage in the moments leading to his demise. Meanwhile, Lyudmila Dubinina, 20, and Semyon Zolotaryov, 38, suffered major chest fractures similar to one someone who collided with a car would receive. And probably the most disturbing part was that Dubinina's body was devoid of her tongue, eyes, part of her lips, facial tissue, and a fragment of her skull bone. Alexander Kolovatov, 24, was also discovered in the same location, but did not have insane wounds like the others. Investigators believe that the timing of deaths for this second group was staggered. They believed that once one person had perished, the living took their clothes and continued onwards. Furthermore, Dubinina's foot was found wrapped in a section of Krivonashenko's wool pants. Adding to the mystery, the clothing worn by both Kolovatov and Dubinina were radioactive. After making additional discoveries, investigators were no closer to getting their answer than before. Again, the Soviet government was fast to close the case and gave explanations that did not satisfy the public. At one point, it was thought that maybe the local Mansi were responsible for the hikers' deaths. This would explain the need to abruptly flee the campsite. But this theory was quickly shot down as the Mansi were known to be peaceful and had no reason to attack the group. Additionally, some of the injuries, specifically the ones that resembled a car accident, could not have been inflicted by a human. The next theory involved an avalanche. The hikers may have run off after hearing the sound of snow falling, which would be an early warning of impending danger. An avalanche would also explain the extreme injuries of some of the victims, but this theory also falls apart since there was no evidence of an avalanche. And the locals also disagreed with this theory. With conventional theories being dried up, people began suggesting the possibility that something supernatural had occurred, or possibly the inclusion of the government since there were traces of radiation at the site. But to be honest, even if a new explanation was provided and confirmed, I don't think the public will be satisfied. This case has attained a sort of mystical status amongst mysteries, and some people are so set on their own theory that they likely wouldn't accept any other. In Murfreesboro, Illinois, there is a mural depicting a Bigfoot-like creature known locally as the Big Muddy Monster. The story of the Big Muddy Monster started on the night of June 25th, 1973. Randy Needham and Judy Johnson parked their car in a secluded area near the Big Muddy River, where they noticed a pungent odor coming from nearby. Turning to investigate, they were met with the jarring sight of a 7-foot monster. Covered in white hair and mud, the creature resembled Bigfoot. It had red eyes and yellow teeth. Immediately, Randy and Judy drove off in search of police. Authorities only responded the next day, and they discovered what seemed to be large, narrow footprints at the site where the creature was seen. On the same day, Randy Creeth and Cheryl Ray claimed to have spotted the creature on her parents' farm. The police report said both Randy and Cheryl watched and observed a large creature walk out of the patch of trees near the edge of the yard and then turn around and walk back into the field. The creature was described as being 7 to 8 feet tall, weighing 300 to 350 pounds, pale dirty white or cream colored, and standing on 2 feet. Creeth stated that he walked toward it and got approximately 30 to 40 feet from it. Creeth also stated that it had a musky odor to it. These reports were enough for Police Chief Toby Berger to make the decision to hunt down this beast. Guiding a group of men accompanied by search dogs, he followed the monster's trail to an abandoned barn. Yet, upon reaching the vicinity of the barn, the dogs suddenly fell silent and refused to venture further. Even after the investigators entered the barn, they could not find the creature or any signs suggesting it was there. Over time, the reported sightings diminished until 1988 when a salvage yard proprietor, his employee, his wife, and his mother experienced a terrifying encounter at the yard. The owner recounted how he and his employee came face to face with the creature, firing shots at it, only to have it retaliate. Seeking refuge in the yard's metallic office space, they endured over half an hour of the creature banging on the exterior walls in response. Films have been made involving the creature and going over various theories and even the possibility that the entire thing is a hoax. In the Bighorn Mountains in the southeast of Montana, Robert Bugsy Springfield, aged 48, went on a hunting expedition to Black Canyon on September 19, 2004. Accompanying him were his 13-year-old son Colton and his adopted son Brent Brooks. Unfortunately, this was the final time Bugsy was seen alive. Bugsy and his family were members of the Crow Nation Indian Reservation. He was raised in the Wayola and Lodge Grass areas where he attended high school. Bugsy made the move to enlist in the Marine Corps at the age of 17. In 1977, he received an honorable discharge marking the end of his military service. He then pursued an education at the Billing Vocational Technical School where he graduated in April 1979. Bugsy found work as a diesel mechanic as well as a heavy equipment operator and firefighter. After their day of hunting, Bugsy's two sons returned to the agreed-upon meeting spot in the late afternoon, expecting to reunite with their father. However, as night fell, their father was nowhere to be seen. They began to worry, and in response, they promptly reached out to both the Bighorn County Sheriff's Office and tribal members to report Bugsy's disappearance. On the day of his disappearance, Bugsy was clad in heavy winter attire and armed with a bow and arrows. Despite efforts to locate him, including the deployment of a FLIR-equipped helicopter scouring the presumed area and the involvement of dogs and horseback searchers, no traces were discovered. No equipment, body, bones, or blood were found. About a year later, in October 2005, a hunter in the Black Canyon area was drawn to the sound of a screeching crow. The bird's unceasing cries led the hunter to a tree where he discovered human remains. A partial skull, a femur, a neatly rolled up men's belt beside the skull, and a pair of boots were all present. Additionally, a men's coat with a small tear in the back and a wallet containing money were discovered on the ground at the scene. Strangely, the bow and arrows Bugsy was said to have with him were nowhere to be found. The FBI was promptly involved since foul play was suspected. It's believed that the money was left in the wallet to try and mislead investigators into thinking that this incident was not foul play. The FBI dispatched the remains to Quantico, Virginia for DNA testing and identification. Throughout the 2 years it took for testing, the FBI maintained no communication with the family during this period. Myra Ventry, Bugsby's sister, expressed her frustration with the situation, saying that their family went through hell. The family received Bugsy's death certificate on November 16, 2007, with the cause of death marked as undetermined. Notably, various items from his wallet, such as his ID and social security card, were returned without visible signs of weathering or water damage. This detail has fueled the family's belief that these items were not subjected to prolonged exposure to nature and thus were housed by someone. So this entry I actually missed from the previous layer, and after I was completely done writing it, it was solved. So I'm still going to include this one at the very end, and unfortunately I cannot play the song for you all since I've gotten mixed information saying that someone is wrongfully copywriting people's videos playing the song when they're not the owner. so just on the off chance this is happening, I'm gonna avoid playing it. The investigation of the song starts with a Reddit post by Nono Seacrest that says the following: "Hey Lost Wave, I am quite active in these subs and you've probably seen me around here. I found a really great song on spiritofradio.ca, which I'll link below. It's only a 30-second snippet and actually got quite a bit of attention when it was originally posted. It sounds like it's from the 80s, but it could be from the 90s too. I really like how the vocalist sings and the overall tone of the song. I'm not 100% sure if the first lyric is nowhere to run, but that's what I think I hear. The lyrics are not easy to make out. In the original post, someone suggested a band called Red Sector 1, and they were a 90s band, not 80s. Some of their songs sound pretty similar to this, including vocals and instrumentals. I can't find this in their Discog though, so if it is them, I'm thinking it's a live recording or a demo perhaps. I have posted it to What's That Song and found someone else also looking there, plus a few other places. If anyone knows the best way to get into contact with Red Sector 1 or knows the song, please let me know. Thanks." Various Reddit users came out to report that they had heard the song from some obscure radio station or actually had the song stashed away on some record they purchased from a local shop. But all these leads would turn out to be fake or proven wrong at some point. On December 13th, 2023, Reddit user GeoToday made the following post titled "Fond My Mind Has Been Identified. Hello members of r/Lost Wave. Boy, do I have some great news for you. One of the most sought after Lost Wave tracks with many placeholder titles, the most well known of which being Fond My Mind, has been identified. Station K, Feels Like a Wish. Currently, I have not been informed on what year the song was produced, but despite all the suspicions, as well as his hostile behavior towards Jay, the owner of Find My Mind Discord server, Feels Like a Wish was in fact produced by Ed Edmond, with vocals provided by Andre Nobrega. The authenticity regarding Ed's claim was confirmed by someone who knows him in real life, William Pava, who also happens to be a musician. William actually has a cassette containing the full song, but as of now, he has only showed us what was previously the lost intro to Feels Like a Wish, which he shared in a 1.5 minute long video, which can be accessed here. He does plan on sending the full song in better quality to the Discord server possibly tomorrow, although there are still about 2.5 weeks left of 2023. What a way to end off the year, solving one of the most hyped up and searched for Lost Wave songs. Many of us can now sleep peacefully now that they know the title of the song. Once the full version in better quality is sent, I hope we can all enjoy every minute of it.